I do think it's one of those stories that will touch people, will move people, but will also give people hope.
Yeah, look, I'm more than happy. I mean, yeah, so part of Tommy's, I think we moved to France in sort of 2014, and we went there, and we sort of been trying a little bit to conceive, and it sort of had sort of worked, hadn't sort of worked, that sort of stuff, and then went there, and then we sort of tried again, and actually we sort of quite successful. We sort of realized we needed a little bit of help, so we had some the cells took some injections, and we ended up having actually having sort of successful with three embryos, right? So it wasn't IVF, it was insemination, but it was a step on that sort of curve towards IVF that we thought potentially we might have to go down. Then we had a reduction, which was quite traumatic in itself, right? You've sort of waited sort of two and a half, well, not 2.5, but let's say 1.5, 2.5 years, whatever it might be, to sort of to get that goal. You have three, you have to remove one, and then we went away on what was supposed to be our sort of last big holiday before they arrived, and it was sort of like maybe like 19 weeks, 20, 21 weeks, something like that. And we landed in Kuala Lumpur within sort of 16 hours. We'd lost both, and that was it, right? So we were just it was pretty traumatic. You have to go with that experience. You have to sort of ring people and tell people, and to sort of head you're in a whirlwind. You have to try and organize flights home, which was pretty difficult, and all that sort of stuff. And I think then you go back into that, I suppose, that sort of goal mode, right? Is that grieving stage, and we did grieve for about maybe I don't know 2-3 months, maybe, if not more. I remember doing a massive walk, and sort of we brought the ashes back, and we said goodbye and all that sort of stuff. Because I think it's sort of when you've worked so hard, or you've thought so hard much about it, and I think it's a lot worse for the women involved in it, because there's that constant hope, right? There's like that the cycle of the menstrual cycle is that constant hope of maybe, and if you skip a day or miss a day, and then suddenly there's that. But as a man, you're sort of sitting there crossing your fingers, so you're sort of a bit of a bystander. And so we went through that whole process, and eventually we conceived again through insemination with our first, who's now sort of 6.5, and then we had another one in the UK again through insemination, and then actually we were kind of like, that's not bad, but pretty good. And we can't conceive naturally, right? And then so we went on holiday, went to Thailand, and with these two lovely kids, etc. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, our third turned up, right? So I'm still questioning his heritage a little bit. still canvassing, who else was on holiday and stuff. They're like, this couldn't happen naturally. But I think that's probably that psychological bit where you're sort of a bit more relaxed, and things are different, and it's easy to say from afar. But I think the one thing I've learned, especially with working with Tommy's, is we don't like talk about it much, right? Like there are 4.5 years between me and my sister. There's like my wife's family. There's 9 years between her sister, her brother, and herself. Right? There's three of them. So they've obviously had, but and my mother-in-law's pretty often. We'll talk about this, but there's often bumps in the road, right? But us Brits certainly, I don't want to include the Irish in sort of sweeping generalization, but like we're pretty stoic, and we just get on with it, right? Stiff upper lip stuff. We don't talk about it. But the more I vocalize it, the more people go, oh, it happened to us. We lost this, and we lost that, right? So, and I think it's important to sort of share the stories, because I think maybe the generation prior to us were less willing to do so, and probably more conscious of what society would think, right? Whereas I think we're in an era now, you don't want to be shouting from the rooftops, but sharing amongst people, and trying to drive the work that Tommy's do of reducing the risk of pregnancy is massively important. But and don't get me wrong, I'd rather have just kept this in house in terms of my greater family, but it also resonates the importance of sharing those stories, that you're not alone, and actually it happens all the time. And